Hey guys, thanks for watching. Real quick, I got banned from TikTok, so follow me on my new TikTok account, @ComeOnManPod. That's @ComeOnManPod. I need to rebuild my TikTok account. Come and follow me. Thanks. What's up, everybody? You are listening to Come On Man, a 3% Man podcast. I'm your host, Paul Bauer, and I am on the road to being a 3% man just like you. If you're new to the show, this is a podcast for fellow students of Corey Wayne's book, How to Be a 3% Man, and for men who just want to be better in general. We talk about dating, gaining wealth, being happy, and using the law of attraction to get everything we want in life. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another awesome week of Come On Man. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit those notifications, like, fave, all that stuff. Leave comments. And if you are listening on your favorite audio podcast platform of choice and they give you the option to review, like they do on Apple, please give us a 5-star review. Also, leave a couple of comments talking about why you like the podcast. It helps more than you know. All right, this week, we have a really great episode. My 3% brother from Louisiana, Matt Sandifer, a divorce attorney, came back on. He was on the podcast last year sometime. He was one of my first guests, actually. And at that time, we dabbled a little bit on the legal stuff, but for the most part, we were talking about his 3% journey. But this time he's back to give us nothing that should be construed as legal advice. We have to say that. Anyways, we talk about all sorts of stuff, because this comes up a lot in the TikToks, where I tell guys get a prenup all the time. And then I have guys in the comments saying prenups don't work. Judges throw out prenups all the time. So I was like, you know what? Let me get Matt on because he's an attorney. Let's see what he has to say about it. So we talk about prenups, we talk about trusts, how men can protect themselves, and how guys can potentially reduce the amount of child support that they have to pay, tactics and stuff like that. It's a pretty good episode. I highly recommend it, especially if you guys are having any kind of questions about whether you should get married or you're thinking about getting divorced, like some of the things that you got to think about. Really good stuff. Also, we give you Matt's contact information if you live in the Louisiana area and you're looking for a solid divorce attorney. So I'll bring you that conversation right after this. Guys, you'll never believe what Duke Cannon did. I thought if I told you guys about it, you might revoke my man card. But then it hit me. This could be awesome for all of us. Duke Cannon has released a basic ass pumpkin spice latte scented bar of soap. Check it out. Now hear me out here, guys. This thing is guaranteed to bring all the basic white girls to the yard. Hell, they might even show up wearing nothing but their Ugg boots. To get yours, visit duke.comeonmanpod.com or click the link in the description to get free shipping. Using the link tells them that I sent you, so it helps me out, and you get free shipping, so it's win-win. That's duke.comeonmanpod.com or click the link in the description. It's pumpkin spice season, so use it to your advantage, men. All right, coming back for another visit to the podcast to give us absolutely nothing that should be construed as legal advice is our very own 3% family law attorney from Louisiana, Matt Sandifer.
How's it going?
Going good, dude. How are you?
Howdy.
How you been up to, man?
I'm wonderful. Child support, child custody, had a trial Monday.
Oh,
yeah. We got like an interim, what they call like an interim judgment. That just basically means it's like a in between, right? So we got to come back for the second part of the trial next month, but it's already been swayed in our favor.
Hey, congratulations.
Just like Coach Corey Wayne, the facts are the facts, so it's one of the things that I like about law is it's, it is what it is. Like you and I could go outside right now and we could argue about stuff, but if the sky's blue, it's blue, right?
Yeah.
I could sit there and say it's green, but at the end of the day, it's blue. So,
that's a good point though. Cause I know there's going to be people that are listening. Cause I get the negative Nancy's in the comments of my TikTok videos all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Bring them at me. Like I'm ready for it. Like I saw I posted one day on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. Like I put up a video about like how you should, like in like custody, child support, all that stuff, you should try to work with the other party, right? Whether y'all are kind of on the opposite end of the issue.
Yeah.
You should always kind of go in with the branch of peace. Now, if they slap your hand out of the way, cool. But at least you always kind of go into that, whether you're represented, you're unrepresented, you always want to do that, right? So you could always take it in front of the judge. And then when you show the judge, hey, judge, this is what I'm offering. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to resolve it. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, they're going to shoot themselves in the foot if they do that. And that's what people don't realize. Like they had one guy who's like, well, that's easy for you to say. Yeah, my situation was different. Like, come on. Okay. I've dealt with children that are both like physically abused, unfortunately, sexually abused. I've dealt with wife beaters. I've dealt with it all.
Yeah.
I've dealt with cheating spouses. I've done it all. Right. So like your situation and, your wife taking her marital portion, like that, smallest violin here, right? Smallest violin for you. Like
You see, I'm a little hurt by that. I'm a little hurt that you say that because
I care. I do care. I really do care. It's just like,
but like you said, the law is the law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I think there's like a big misconception. Like one of them that I see a lot, especially like going into this is community property, right? So we're kind of talking last time on like the division of assets and how, the prenuptial agreement comes into play. And, I know they had some people that are saying, well, yeah, it could be, a prenup could be invalidated.
Yeah.
A prenup could actually, it's a contract like anything else. So like here in Louisiana, you got to get it notarized. You got to have witnesses. You can't have been coerced. Like I can't hold a gun to your head.
Now, see, I just want to stop you right there because that's the biggest thing that a lot of people say in the comment section is that judges will throw it out because women will say, I was coerced into this, or, he wouldn't marry me unless I did this. And I've had people say that if she doesn't have her own attorney present to represent her, that they can throw it out because it'll make it look like she wasn't properly represented. And so I just wanted to.
It's going to kind of depend where you're at. Like I could tell you here in Louisiana, and we're kind of like, I love our state, but we're kind of like a backward state on certain stuff. And we haven't caught up like a lot of these other states. But speaking from my perspective, where I'm at down here, the big things that they're going to look for are things that you're going to kind of that go against public policy, right? Like if it's forcing you to kind of, if it's just like, how do I put this? If it's drastically unfair, like, right? Like okay. If it says like, it's not working out between us, and in that case, in the prenup, I have to pay you like $60,000. Believe it or not, I've seen that happen, right? Mm-hmm. Something like that. Yeah. They're going to probably invalidate it. They'll invalidate it on the format, like the big one's the formality of it. Mm. If they come in and they try to say, well, he wouldn't marry me. You still entered into a contract under your own free will. It doesn't matter if you had an attorney there, you didn't have an attorney there. That's your own fault. Like, I'm sorry. Like you should have gotten an attorney to look at that. But that being said, it doesn't, you got to think of it like this. It works kind of like if you're buying a home, right? Think of getting married, like buying a home. You could either rent, right? You have the choice of, kind of hopping from place to place, mm-hmm. Kind of being like the ladies' man, if you will, or you could settle down and have that nice house. Does that mean one's better than the other one? Not really. Like it just depends on what you want out of life, right?
Sure.
So with that consideration, you got to think of the prenup as almost getting like a home warranty. Like you're buying a house, but you have a home warranty. So if something breaks, like the AC goes out, or I don't know, there's something wrong with the wiring in the house, it's covered, right? So that's the way you got to look at a prenup. So a lot of people, what they get confused is like the division of assets, because the big thing that it does is it keeps stuff separate, right? So whatever you bring stays yours, right? It doesn't get commingled, right? So usually the way it works, they call it acquiescing gains, right? So what does that mean? That just basically means, in a nutshell, anything like the date of the marriage going forward until the divorce is finalized, the judge signs off on it, is considered community property. It doesn't matter if I put in 80%, the other party puts in 10%, you still split it 50-50.
So prenup, so anything gained during the marriage, prenup doesn't help with that.
It can't. It'll keep it separate. So so if you're putting in 20%, your 20% will stay your 20%, and my 80% will stay my 80%. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll stay separate. So if the issues where it kind of gets a little confusing is like if you're buying like a house, we call it, a movable property here in Louisiana, right? So you have movable, immovable, right? So movable could be like anything you can pick up, move. Like, right, I got this phone, right? So I could pick up, move this from place to place. That's movable property. Immovable property would be consistent. Like you see the walls right here, everything on my walls, that's immovable. Well, that's technically like a component part of a movable property, but yeah. So it's just going to keep, that's where the issue is. You're still going to kind of divide it the same way. You'll still probably do like, you either have an option of where, if it is considered community property, most of the time what you'll do is you'll have like a buyout, right? So if you go in, it's considered community property, you'll have one party buy out the other party, or you could formally file something and they call it a partition, right? So what you're doing is you're asking the court to take an invisible pair of scissors, and you go in there, you force a sale on the property, and then you both go your separate ways. You get, like, if you have a $200,000 house, $300,000, whatever it is, I get my $100 and whatever $1,000, you get your $100 whatever $1,000, and we move away, right? Now, what a lot of people don't think about with the prenup is, like, if you already buy your house, what you could have is you could have a situation to where you have the other party could basically be recomprehensed for providing services, whatever. So, like, let's say you meet Mrs. Wright, you get married, you already have your house, right? That's your separate property, right? You own it outright. You don't have to force a sale. However, if she could show that she's providing any maintenance, she's doing upkeep, she's mowing the grass, she's painting, she's putting stuff up, and she's using her money to do that, she could file like a reimbursement claim for that. And then you would have to pay her back for the time, labor, whatever, right? So that's usually how sometimes you'll see a lot of people get that back when it's separate property, right? But you got to think of it this way, right? With the separate versus community. Think of it this way, because a lot of people, another thing I get is a lot of people think, well, I'm going to set up a separate bank account, right? So just because it's set up as a separate bank account doesn't mean that it's separate property, right? It's just in two different accounts. Think of it this way. I brought like a set of pins. See right here, I got these pins, right?
Yeah.
Pretend this is, all these pins are your money, right?
Yeah.
This is what I acquired during the marriage. So this right here is your marriage, right? This is all the stuff that we've gotten during the course of the marriage, right? So what I do is, if I take this out of here, right? I'm taking it out, I'm taking all the pins out.
Yeah.
Now I could take these pins out. I could put them in 2 stacks. I could split them up into 3 stacks. It doesn't matter. They're still from the same source, right?
Sure.
So they're still community property, right? The only thing that's going to really affect is, like, if she's, I don't know, she tries to go in and just change everything on the accounts and start some funny business, right? So that's where it'll help you out. It's not going to make it separate property. It'll just make you have access to your money a little bit quicker.
Now, I always put out on TikToks that and on the podcast that I could get married again, but I wouldn't do it without a prenup or separate banking accounts. Now, the reason why I say separate banking accounts isn't because I think it's going to protect my assets. It's because it's going to protect me from fighting.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I feel like
110%.
Because when I was married, that was like our biggest fights were always financial. And it was because I wanted to buy something here and she wanted to spend that money over here. And so I would go and buy my thing and she'd get mad at me for buying whatever. So the way I look at it is, well, if I took that out of the equation where I have an account, she has an account, and then we have a joint community account for bills and stuff, as long as we're both, putting money into the bill pot and bills are getting paid, then it doesn't matter what I'm doing with my bank account here. And it doesn't matter what she's doing. She can go buy shoes and shit and go get her hair done.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think that's what more people should do that.
But I wouldn't look at it like it's some kind of asset protection. It's just it's a fight protection.
Yeah. Oh, 110%. 110%. Yeah. But I just say that because I think some people get that idea, right? So I'm going to put it in a separate account so it becomes separate property.
Right.
That actually gets, believe it or not, Louisiana, if you didn't know, has the longest bar exam in the country, right? So we have,
I think you mentioned that in the last episode.
Yeah. So we have like a full week, right? And one of the things that they always test almost every year, and they call it Code 1, is in the division of property, is it'll always be like husband, wife, no prenup, right? Husband will bring in a separate portion of money, right? He struck it big, right? He brought it into the marriage and he puts it in the checking account, right? And he doesn't touch it, right? And then wife tries to come after it. And they ask you how you divide it, right? So since they didn't have a prenup, like I said, you go back to like what's gained out of the marriage. And that also, by the way, goes to debts too. So a lot of people want to take just the good. Right. They don't think about like what I owe, right? So they just want to take the money, the good part. They don't want to take the bad part. But that being said, so you have this pot of money that's just sitting there. So that would be separate because you brought it into the marriage, right? However, what's not is what they'll get you on is the interest, right? So let's say that pot of money is just sitting in the bank account and it's getting, 3% interest a year. That 3% that you gained on it of whatever is going to be community property, and you would have to split it with them.
Oh, okay. So that's without a prenup too. That's without a prenup. They're still technically protected because they brought it into the marriage, as long as they can prove that they brought it into the marriage.
Yeah. So, speaking of which, bringing stuff into the marriage, another good one here in Louisiana, you got 2 exceptions to the community property rule, right?
Oh, okay.
The first one is settlements, right? So let's say you and wife are out doing something, right? You go out separately, you're riding your motorcycle, whatever. Somebody plows into you, get, and then, it's just awful, right? You go to the hospital, you're racked up in medical bills, but thankfully you get an awesome, just personal injury attorney, right? And then they take care of that for you. So you get like a settlement. That settlement amount is going to be separate from your community property. That's the first exemption, right? Mm. So any kind of settlement or anything from a legal action is going to be considered that. And then also we have a second exemption for inheritance, right? So if you inherited something like, God forbid, mom, dad kicked the bucket and they leave something to you, that's not considered community. That's considered your separate assets.
Interesting.
So that's important to know too. Okay. Because I think most states kind of operate under that rule. They make it like they're so different, and they're not. They have like little tweaks to it, like different formulas for stuff, like the way they calculate child support. Maybe it's more favorable this way. Maybe it's more favorable that way. Alimony, same thing, but it's the general same concepts wherever you go from state to state. Even Louisiana, everybody says, "Oh, Louisiana's so different." Civil versus common law. It's really not. We changed the name. We got a couple of different terms, but it's the same thing. Still
pretty simple. There's some like minor differences in some of the stuff in different states. Like I've heard that, like, so for instance, Colorado for alimony has a formula, and it's half the amount of time of the marriage is how long you're supposed to pay based on the formula. So I was married for 14 years. The statute said I would have had to pay her for 7. We were able to negotiate that down to 5. Now,
awesome.
I've heard that California, their statute says you pay her alimony for life, like for the rest of her life. I don't know if you're familiar with California law, but that's what
I could say this. I learn new stuff every day, right? You're gonna have lawyers that will sit there and they'll pretend like, oh yeah, and they'll just, oh yeah, I knew that. No, I knew that. Like,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I learn something new every day.
Nothing wrong with
I learn something new every day. Like,
yeah,
cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
people bring stuff to my attention. I'm like, yeah.
I can see that. I mean, I think that's awful, because that's not what alimony was really designed for. And we talked about it in the last episode. It was sort of designed for women to be able to have a way to support themselves until they found a new husband to take care of them.
Yeah, it was a way to prevent. Well, it was a way to prevent you from kind of like falling on government assistance, right? So that was like a big push for that. But now, like I said, because you have equality and everything, final spousal support here in Louisiana is kind of going away. It's kind of dissipating. You got to be married for like decades to get final support. And then usually that most of the time I've seen it, they don't even award it the full amount of time, like for life, right? But statutorily here, if they were to award it for life, it terminates if they cohabitate, get married, they meet somebody else is supporting them.
I think that's how
you're also prevented if you're at fault when for marriage at the time of filing, which means
you cheated.
Like if you're married to somebody else, right?
Okay.
And during the time of filing, you do something, right? So that could be adultery, that could be spousal abuse, right? You hit your wife, that could be doing something messed up to the kids. That could be incarceration of felony convictions, stuff like that. Like you're not, If it's something that could grant you like an immediate divorce or something like that, you're looking at being preempted from getting it.
Okay. Yeah, but there's states like I think Colorado is what's it called, a no fault state or something like that, where
so no fault. Yeah, so no fault basically, because Louisiana is also a no fault state. So what that means is, in a nutshell, when you're filing the petition, you don't have to put on there. It's not a check on the box. I'm divorcing them because I don't like them. Irreconcilable differences. All it means is I would like a divorce, and you shouldn't have to explain it, which I agree with. I don't think it should be public record why your relationship didn't work out, right? Like, I think that's a great idea. However, you do put a reason if you're wanting it expedited, right? So there's certain instances where you can get that divorce expedited. And the only reason why you have to put that reason is because you have a hearing to determine that, right? So you go up in front of the judge. Usually it lasts about 5-10 minutes. I do them all the time.
Yeah.
I'll show up to court, especially adultery, right? So it'll be like, other side's like, yeah, I admitted it. I cheated. Yeah. Then we have like maybe some pictures or something else. Just kind of like, just ask them a couple of questions. 5 minutes goes by, and then, judge is like, enter judgment of divorce. Bam. Right. So stuff like that, you could get an expedited divorce, but you're kind of, the state's kind of saying, hey, I want to know why I'm kind of having this expedited, right? They want to know the reason why they're having this push forward. They don't really care that it's being pushed forward. They just want to know why, right? So that's the only time you really need to list why.
Okay. That makes sense.
But other than that, you just separate and then you just write it out. Divorces are actually really easy to do. The problem is a lot of attorneys, they don't do them right. And so you could really mess them up if you don't do them right. Right. So if you don't file this right, you don't file that right. You have certain forms you got to fill in, right? You got to do like a checklist at the end, make sure I filled this out, filled out on this date. They were separated on this date. The other party was served on this date, or they waived service. Like I've seen people, like I've had both sides come in there, and instead of formally having like a police officer come out there and give you the paperwork and serve you, I've had it where the other side's like, hey, look, I know this stuff's kind of embarrassing and you want people up in your business. If you want to come to my office, I'll sign a waiver, right? So you know about it, and I give them a certified copy, right? And most of the time they do that. I've done that. I had a couple this week actually that were just not feeling it, right? They just weren't vibing. did their divorce, did their custody, never had to touch court. We even did child support. Didn't have to leave the office. We just sat here, worked it out. And most of the time, that's what they want. The judges, by the way, love that.
Yeah.
They love that. If you're trying to do that and then it comes back later on, something comes up and you have to modify something and they look at it and they see, oh, they try to work out themselves. The judge is going to work with you a lot more, right? It's called they call it a stipulated judgment. It means that both parties stipulated to it. It's not what they call a considered decree. Considered is like the judge does it themselves. The judge is forcing it because the parties won't cooperate. That's why I say it's best. That's why I always push to work with the other side, right? At least get something. Like family law is like one of the few areas, especially with custody, right? Custody is a big one. You could always go back. You could always modify. It's not like, oh, it's going to be this, and then it's going to go forward, right? If something changes, you could always go back and you could always modify it. It's just, that's one of the things I absolutely love about it. Everybody's like, oh, I couldn't do family law. It's too much drama. I love it because like I said, if your client doesn't get what they want or what they think that they're entitled to, usually you could go back and find a way to get from point A to point B. And it's not that hard to do.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, going back to what you were saying about the judges prefer people working together, probably because they don't want to hear it. I would imagine I would hate sitting in a courtroom listening to people bitch and stuff like that. I had an ex-girlfriend that, she had a custody battle with her ex-husband. And like during her divorce, like he paraded in like 20 different character witnesses just to shit all over her. And I was like, why would the judge just allow this to continue? Like it's like, we get the point.
Yeah.
Your friends don't like her. Like, okay.
I kind of see the point of some of that, but not to that degree. Yeah. If there was like a trial, right? But if there's not a trial and you're not even having a hearing, I mean, it might be good to have like one person there for emotional support. Like maybe there was like a contentious issue, right? Like I had a guy that just like, he beat like the living crap out of my client. Like she was a woman. Right. And so it was good for her to have like somebody there, right? Because you're facing this guy that just like knocked the crap out of you. Which, by the way, that's one of the funnest things that I love doing is taking guys that just like beat their wives and just like running them through the ringer. Like I absolutely hate bullies. Oh,
okay. So you like that? You like?
Oh, absolutely. 110%. Like if I find out that you're like, if you did something to your wife, that's like definitely not like a 3% man thing. That's just like, very, you're like a bully. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than I will. Oh my God. I get so much joy out of that. Those are the cases I really like.
It's satisfying.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I think we talked a little bit about spousal support in a prenup. And now in the last episode, you talked about the difference in Louisiana. There's an interim spousal support and then there's final spousal support, right?
Yeah.
And you said that interim cannot be waived, but and you said that the final spousal support usually doesn't get applied anyway. But could you in the prenup specify that when you guys part ways, you part ways without spousal support? Can that be put into a prenup?
You can do that for final. So interim, here's the thing about interim.
That's what I meant for final.
Yeah. You could waive final. Absolutely. That's what most people do. Interim, you're looking at during the process of the divorce while you're separating. Louisiana just kind of recently changed the law, right? So you could get it 180 days or 6 months past the date of divorce, but that's like a worst case scenario, right? And then after that, boom, you're done, right? So you're off the hook.
Yeah.
But Louisiana's pretty much, they're kind of doing away with that. For the most part, I've only seen it like long-term stuff happen. Like I had a couple that was married for like 30 plus years.
Yeah.
30, 40 years. And it was like this old woman, right? And she legitimately just relied on her husband. I think they had like a restaurant or something together. Mm-hmm. And so that's the only skill she learned was like through his business. So, like She got something a little bit more long-term than that, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. So you could specify that upfront in the prenup that when we part ways, no final support.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, it's important that like anybody watching this knows that like the prenup, it's not a silver bullet, right? It's not a silver bullet for anything, but what it will do is it's kind of like you wearing a bulletproof vest. You can still take a hit, right? But the damage you're going to take when you get hit is going to be a lot less than, let's say, if you weren't wearing that vest at all, right? So that's the way I like to think of it.
Got it. You still get some cracked ribs, but you won't die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you put provisions in there for child custody and child support? Like, let's say you guys, like, they're young kids, they get married, they're 22, they haven't had any kids yet, but they know that they want them someday. Could you put provisions in there? Like, okay, let's say we have, in the event that we have kids, we split them 50-50 and, or is that not able to put
you usually are going to kind of take care of that, like, post divorce anyway. Because, okay, so a lot of people don't know what I try to tell people, whether they go through me or they go through somebody else, right? When you're doing custody and you're doing divorce, attach them together, right? Because when you're filing them with the court, you're going to get, if you file them separately, it's two separate actions. You get a court fee here, right? And they ding you, like here in Louisiana in East Baton Rouge Parish, because we don't have counties, we have parishes.
Right.
You're looking at like $500-600 for a filing fee. And $500-600 here, versus if you put them together, you're paying that just one $500-600, right? So you save a good amount of money just by putting them together. But most of the time, you're going to kind of do that. You're kind of like, I wouldn't put that. I wouldn't put that in there. Let's put it that way. Because
things change too, right? And by the time you have kids, one person might be working, she might not be working because she's trying to take care of the kids. In which case, is it really feasible for this guy to have 50-50 because he's working all the time? Like that was that was one of the things that my attorney brought up to me, like, because my ex-wife wanted full custody, and I was like, but I actually, because I work from home, I was able to watch the kids easier and stuff like that, because she would have had to get babysitters on her weeks. And so he's like, we actually have a pretty good compelling case for 50-50 here. Whereas most, like a lot of times it's not the case. He's like, if a dad's like an oil rig worker and he's gone like for 3 to 6 months out of time, like a 50-50 makes no sense in that case.
Yeah.
So
and you're gonna, like, it's weird how that works too, because like you'd see, like, we have like East Baton Rouge, you got 4 judges, right? And you have like one side of the hall and the other side of the hall, and it's kind of funny. You walk like 15 feet from Judge A to Judge B, and they'll have a completely different view, and they'll kind of steer away from something, right? So one of the popular ones is, they call it I don't like it at all. And I see why this certain judge here where I'm at doesn't like it, right? It's called a 2-2-3 schedule, right? So it's like mom will go 2 days, dad will go 2 days, and then you'll flip the 3 days, which is usually weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The problem that I find with that is it's incredibly confusing, right? So you can easily lose track, especially if the kid's out of school, you don't know what's going on. COVID hits and you have to you have to quarantine. It just becomes a mess, right? So my big one is, if you're going to do 50-50, week on, week off.
Yep.
And then there's some parishes, neighboring parishes in some areas that don't like doing 50-50 custody. They like just having the designated domiciliary parent, which, by the way, the domiciliary parent, everybody makes like, it's like they get in a big fight about that. The domiciliary parent is just kind of like the tiebreaker, right? Just think of it that way. If there's a judgment call that has to be made and the other party isn't there, they can make it. It doesn't mean that like dad doesn't have a decision on where, Johnny or Susie could go to school. It just means that if something happens, like once again, COVID, right? Last year, COVID, hey, I got to pull our kid out of school because there's been an exposure, right? So I'm going to make that decision right then and there. right? The other parent still gets to say whatever. They have a say in taking the kid to the doctor. They can show up to the PTA meetings. They can do whatever they want. They just small little things, judgment calls, right? So,
got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about prenups. One thing that I've heard people say in the comment section, and obviously is I take everything that people say in the comments like with a grain of salt because they're not attorneys. A lot of people are like, "Oh, you have to get a post-nup, and you got to get, and then you have to have it updated regularly." Like if you really are anal about trying to protect your stuff, like is that a thing? Is a post-nup a real thing?
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. It works just like a prenup, like same thing. It's a contract, right? So just you make the requirements for that type of contract in your state, right? So Louisiana here, once again, got to have the notary, got to have witnesses, all that. Can't be like boozing and drinking it up. Can't have somebody like beating you, trying to get you to sign it. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you want to get a little like anal retentive about it and you want to update it every few years, I mean, sure, I guess.
Yeah.
I think if you have like a solid one, it doesn't really matter. But if you want that peace of mind and you want that like little security blanket over you to make yourself feel better, like go for it.
Okay. Would it help, do you think? Or is it overkill?
I think it depends on your situation, right? So let's say, it's going to depend on like how your stuff's defined at the beginning one, right? So it's going to depend on like the seed that you plant, right? So your the original one's going to be kind of like your seed, and it's going to kind of sprout like a tree or whatever, right? So however your tree grows is going to depend on how you want to trim it, right? So maybe if it has a branch that goes off this way and you don't like that, you take a saw to it and you cut it off. So it could just depend. So I like to have one that's pretty that kind of covers everything, not specific dates. I like just certain things that are covered, and that's just me. That's my approach. I find that works best, unless I know I have like another party that's going to be absolutely just like that's going to try to out lawyer the other party. Yeah. Right. So like if I have a party and we're doing like custody, going back to custody, I always go to custody because it's the easiest thing to explain those things with. Right. So if I have one party and we say, we're going to mutually agree to, drop off a kid at mutually agreed upon location. Right. But I know the other party is going to try to lawyer you and then try to spin that for my client. What I'll do is I'll specifically say, no, we're going to meet at the school. No, we're going to meet at the gas station. No, we're going to meet at the police station.
Okay.
We're going to meet at 6:15. And some people like that. Some people want stuff really, really specific. And if you have a good attorney, they're going to kind of cater an approach for you, right? So what works for one person over here isn't going to work over here, right? So everybody's a little bit different. You got to that's why I have interviews and I have consults with people. I'll just sit there and I'll kind of see, okay, so what are you worried about? What kind of things are you worried about with this? Well, I'm just worried about, making sure she gets the kid to school on time. Okay. So she's got, accountability issues, right? Or, I'm kind of worried about her, excuse me, coming after me with, coming back and, like increasing child support. Okay. I'd be like, okay, so we need a lot of time, right? Because like, I think I explained this last time, one of the best ways to calculate to get a fairer number in child support is getting more time, because the state's going to assume while that kid is in your custody and spending time, you're paying for them. So that's less of an obligation that's owed. So that's one of the things that I did today. And so saved this guy probably close to $300 a month on child support.
Oh, nice.
Just out of a paycheck, just from getting him more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So now besides prenups, is there anything else a man can do to sort of protect like what he's built, like his business wise? Now I've heard things like about hiding assets in trusts. Have you dealt with that?
It's kind of funny you should say that, because I'm dealing with that from the other end right now.
Okay.
I got a client right now who they were married, right?
All right.
I mean, not terribly long, right? But the husband's kind of doing that. Like, he's trying to put this whole charade. Like, he did like day trading. He had money in that. He's got a separate account from this. He's got a separate account from that.
Yeah.
If you got like a thorough attorney, they're going to send out they're going to send out discovery, which is like your interrogatories, your requests for production. And I'm going to find out all that stuff. And if you lie about it, well, I mean, first of all, you're violating the law.
Okay.
Right. You're breaking the law, but I'm going to get my paper.
So if it's in a trust and a trust owns those assets, though, I mean, are you really lying about it? I mean, are you really breaking the law? Because aren't trusts aren't they a legal entity?
They are. I mean, it depends how it's set up. Was it like a trust you set up while you were married? Was it a trust that was set up that was,
let's say it was a trust
through inheritance? You get what I'm saying? You have different types of trusts. So I guess it would just really have to depend.
I would imagine if I was going into a marriage, and I put everything into a trust before the marriage, that's
you're
a no-brainer.
safe. All that's safe.
Totally safe. Mm-hmm. But if if I start a business and I try to finagle it so that the business itself is owned by this trust, so that like all the money made and stuff like that, and I set this up after I'm married, like is that protected, or
just like I said, like your community property stuff is going to take care of that. If you get a solid prenup at the beginning that just says, hey, I'd like to keep everything separate, right? You're going to be a businessman. You're going to make money one day, right?
Okay.
And you're going to form an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, whatever it is. And I'd like to keep that separate. There's no need to do all that extra stuff. You're just kind of overcomplicating it, right? Like if it's separate, it's separate. You don't have to do all this extra stuff.
But then there's people that are going to be like, well, the judge is just going to throw out the prenup. It's like, how often does that happen?
Violates, like if there's certain provisions in there, like I said, that directly or just that grossly violate public policy, yes, they're going to throw it out. If it lacks formality for whatever state you're in, yes, it can get thrown out, right? And then there's also, like I said, it works just like a contract. So like whatever, sometimes they won't even throw the whole thing out. They'll just throw out that portion out, right? And then the rest of it will flow.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, there's also this perception that, and my wife had this perception going into our divorce, that the court system is biased towards women. Like they favor women. And my wife was in for a rude awakening when like I was granted 50-50. And,
I'm sure she was.
And it was like I was lucky though. My the mediator for when we did our mediation was best friends with my attorney, and he was a former judge. And so he would go and tell her, I mean, he did it fairly, but he would go and tell her like, look, as a judge, this is how I would rule. Nudge her in the right direction, So, I don't know. Like, do you see that? Do you think that there's a bias, or do you think that judges are pretty, they follow the letter of the law pretty well?
There are. And then you got I hate to say this because like, I don't want anybody who's listening to think that I'm bashing judges. I'm bashing the court system.
Sure.
Because I'm really not. But the problem is things have moved at such a fast rate, right? We've progressed so much generally as a species, as humans, that the law is grasping on how to keep up with that.
Okay.
The law is grasping on how to keep up with that. Now, I think like initially there have been some situations where women think that they've won short term, but in the long term they really don't. right? They might get like an initial sum of money, but in the long term, I don't really see that anymore. You don't see that a lot anymore. I mean, there are some judges that like, what you call them like father's right judges or mother's rights judges, but they can't judicially do anything out of the ordinary. Like they can't say, hey, I know the law says this, but because you're a guy, I'm going to do this, or because you're a girl, I could do this. Right. So that's like, there's a big case with that in Louisiana. Bergeron versus Bergeron. Bergeron versus Bergeron pretty much said, like with custody, like once again, that's where my heart is dealing with kids, right? If you can't tell, but what that says is custody isn't awarded based on like, I'm mom, I'm dad, I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. What it says is custody is awarded on these 14 factors. And what are those? Those are like the sustainability, right? Are you hopping from house to house? Are you hopping from job to job? What's your relationship like? What's the kid like? What's the ability to care, ability to provide, ability to nurture, all those things, right? And some will get some on this side, some will get on this side. And then they have to weigh those against each other to find the most suitable outcome. They can't just say, oh, well, your mom, you get the kids, or your dad, you get the kids. That's kind of gone by the wayside now.
Okay. One thing where I've sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily, it was a biased judge, or it was just the fact that I didn't have an attorney, probably because I didn't have an attorney. But last year sometime, my ex-wife went after me for more child support, and we went to court. And I argued that, according to the statute in Colorado, if you're intentionally underemployed or intentionally unemployed, then the state is supposed to impute an income on you to base their calculations off of. Now, my ex-wife she works part-time, but she does it by choice. And so the state wanted to go after me for like, almost $1,000. Whereas my child support up until that point was $140 a month because of 50-50. And I was like, oh, $140, like nothing, but $1,000, like, are you serious? So I filed a motion to object saying, according to the statute, she's, you need to impute a higher income.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I'll tell you how you get around that game. Because I see that all the time, right? And it works the same way here, right? It's like if you don't have a wage, what they're going to do is they're going to calculate minimum wage, right? State minimum wage, and then versus your wage, right? So one of the things that I do is I'll say, if they're only working part-time, they can't afford this, this, and this. And then I'll leverage custody. Yeah. And then I'll use the custody to flip that back around.
That's right.
And push the number down to lower it. Right. So it's like you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right. So
because
go for it. Act like you don't want to work, because I'm going to flip it back around.
Because in the 3% man group, that's what you said. You said you would have used custody. You would have tried to go after more custody to try to leverage.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of my favorite things is I was talking about a while ago with custody was with the best interest of the child was like the actual preference of the child. Yeah. Now people do this all the time. And there's a guy, a really good, I like following him. I follow him on TikTok. Major shout out to him. Not going to say his name, but he's like a family law attorney out of Tennessee. And I love just his analogies, the ways that he puts stuff to you. So if you're reading this, if this goes on TikTok.
I know who you're talking about. I think I know exactly who you're talking about.
Shout out to you, right? He kind of basically, he didn't say this, but he's kind of using the analogy with the whole making your, I kind of like using the analogy, making your kids eat broccoli, right? Sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do. So, you have like Johnny or Susie, I don't want to go back with mom. I don't want to go back with dad. Well, unless like dad's like beating you, dad doesn't have a bed for you to sleep in. not provided the basic necessities, you're going to go back and stay with dad. Now, where the preference comes in when they hit a certain age, it's not like it's not like a flat age. It's not like, oh, you hit 16. Guess what? You get to pick.
Yeah.
Right. It's just heavily taken into consideration because they know at that age, you start having some critical thinking skills. All right. So I can't bribe you with a piece of candy to get you to come stay over here. Right. Yeah. So keep that in consideration, right? So even if they say, I don't want to, most of the time it's the actual fighting between the parents, right? So the way you want to do it is you want to make the kid think, this is mom's house, this is dad's house. I'm going to stay at mom's house. I'm going to stay at dad's house now, right? You don't want them to associate you two being divorced, you two being separated. Mom just stays over here, dad stays over here. That's the way you want to do it.
That's pretty much how I've done it with my kids.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to say this because people don't do this. I have to put in there all the time in the custody agreements, just for the parties to get along. Mm-hmm. Don't talk about the case in front of the kids. Don't disparage the other parents. Stuff that like you would do, clearly you would do, and most of the people would do, but I have to put it because people don't do it. A
lot of people like to talk shit about their, ex in front of their kids. And I think that's a travesty. That's an absolute travesty.
It is.
So, all right. So we talked a crap load about assets and protecting ourselves. It seems to me that the only real way to fully protect yourself is not get married.
and then even then, like that can screw you over too.
You got to live in separate households
over too.
Yeah, because in Colorado, if you're living with somebody after like 7 years, it's common law, and they could still get shit.
We don't have that.
Okay,
we don't have that. We recognize it from other states. Yeah. It's a constitutional thing at that point, but we recognize it. But here's where that like comes into play, right?
Okay.
That comes into play a lot with paternity, right? So I had a case because the parties were never officially married. They had kids together. They cohabitated. They lived together. They were kind of smart about things, right? Mom was giving birth to their second child. They never argued, never anything, but she died due to complications during childbirth, right? God forbid. She passed away. Because they were never married, they wouldn't let there was an issue that arose. They wouldn't let dad go in the room to sign the birth certificate. So there became like an issue of like paternity, him trying to grab the kid and, head off. Both of the families were happy, right? So the grandma on the mom's side of the family just like went, picked the kid up from the hospital, handed it to him. But I'm still having to sort out the paperwork for it, right?
Okay.
So the kid's considered legally his. Right. You'll see that a lot with paternity, which that's another thing I kind of want to talk to y'all about. Like if you're, especially being a 3% man, right? The whole concept, like I've seen a bunch of the guys talking about it, right? Like having your set of standards, right? Yeah. Don't, like I'm telling you, do not go just sleeping around with whoever. Like I get that lifestyle and you want to go out and you want to hook up with like hot girls. That's great. But just be really, really careful. I had a guy who we sorted his stuff out, right? We got it sorted out. He was getting with this girl, not married, and she ended up having a kid, right? He agreed to pay child support, right? And they worked out a child support thing. It wasn't contemptuous. He was just trying to pay for child support.
Yeah.
A couple of years came by and there was some funny stuff. The kid started like looking a little bit different. He was like, this kid doesn't look like me. And then come to find out the kid wasn't even his kid. And he's been paying like 2-3 years worth of child support on this kid.
My God. See, I think that's a most guys.
Yeah. And it happens. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you're like going out and hooking up with these girls, just like be careful about it, be really, really careful. I know a lot of the guys in the group talk about that all the time about having a set of standards, but I'm telling you, I mean, even from like a legal standpoint, like have a freaking set of standards. Like, I think you talk about all the time. Like, I'm not using the first date as like a hookup, right? It's an interview. Yeah. You want to do that. You want to have that litmus test for whatever girl you want. You don't want to get involved with like a train wreck. happens all the time.
Yeah, I've dated.
I even had a case where it was like, I got a case where I've seen cases where the person is married.
Yeah.
They go on a break, and then she's gotten with like the spouse, not the spouse, the
pool boy,
like the sibling of the spouse.
Okay.
And then had a second kid. Yeah. And because there's a presumption of paternity, and if you're married, it's automatically presumed, it's rebuttable, but you have to bring up that rebut and show it clear and convincing evidence, clear and convincing evidence that kid's not yours. Most of the time, it's just a DNA test. Just go take a DNA test.
Yeah. Can the mom refuse a DNA test?
Most of the time, if they do, the court's just going to compel them to go take one.
Okay.
It's really, really important. If you think that the kid's not yours, that you go and you file some sort of action. Because here in Louisiana, I can't speak for all states, but here in Louisiana, if you find out you have reason to believe that that kid is not yours, right, through whatever reason, right, and you don't act within a year, you're still on the hook. Because the state of Louisiana has pretty much said, hey, you've assumed care for the kid. Now, that kid, the interesting thing about that, if they find their actual biological parent, what's cool, this is like a side note, it's kind of a nerd thing. They could actually inherit money from their biological parent as well as their legal parent.
Okay.
So, yeah, but paternity is like kind of a big issue. So just like the 3% guys out there, just like I'm telling you, be really, really careful with who you're hooking up with.
Are you familiar with Tom Likas? Do you know who Tom Likas is? He was he was a radio personality out of Los Angeles, and he's like an old OG red pill type guy. And he used to always tell guys, just get a vasectomy. Now, and I got one, but I already have my kids. I don't think I would recommend that to guys who are young, that are, like Luke, for instance, who's on the podcast all the time in the 3% Man group. He's a young guy. I wouldn't recommend that because, someday you might want to have kids, but definitely after you've had kids, get a vasectomy.
And it's like, it's noteworthy to know that that none of this is a bad thing, right? Like, I mean, I got the guy I'm working with right now, the other attorney, he's about to get married. We've turned it I can't tell you how many divorces we turned out. We still get married. So there still is hope out there. So it's not like I don't want you to hear all the stuff that I'm saying and think that there aren't good women out there, right? There are good women. It's just, you got to kind of dig a little bit, and you just got to keep swiping left. You just keep swiping left until you find something that works for you. Don't settle. Don't settle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not anti-marriage. I'm not super pro-marriage. I sort of look at marriage like there's really not a lot of benefit in it for men anymore. But I'm like, if that's what you want to do, like, that's cool. That's one of the best things about Corey Wayne's book is if you want to be a player and just date, women and plate spin for the rest of your life, like, you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to find the girl of your dreams and settle down and get married someday, you can do that too. It runs the gambit. That's one of the best things about that book, I think.
I agree. And look, I use that. I'm telling you, I use the book more for my clients. I'm telling you. Right. So like, I'll do it all the time. I even use it for women. Right. So I had a woman who had that I finished up her divorce and everything. And she's like, the dad's trying to bend the rules. He's trying to do this. He's trying to do that. Just like with dating, right? Like, oh, we made plans and now we're going to change plans. Now we're going to do this. And then you just got to, what do you got to do? You got to pull the takeaway method, right? You got to remove yourself from the situation. And that's why I tell her, I Corey Wayne that other guy. I was like, yeah, you just say, hey, I'm not deviating from this. And I'm not discussing this, call me when you want to communicate about whatever, but I'm not doing this. And you turn around and you walk away. So all those people in the comments are saying, oh, am I supposed to do this or didn't do that? You don't know the material all in the book, because you can apply it to everything. You apply it to business, you apply it to romance, you apply it to whatever it is you're doing.
Agreed. Yeah. In fact, I'm reading Rollo Tomasi's third book right now, and I just finished his second book. He even says that. He's like, look, I'm teaching you guys the inner gender dynamics, what does he call it? Intersexual dynamics or something like that. He goes, but you can apply aspects of game, as he calls it, game, in every area of your life and be a better person for it.
Yeah. There's a great book, I think, with that. It's called it kind of uses some of the Corey Wayne stuff, but it's more so like, general well-being. It's called the 48 Laws of Power. Oh,
I've heard of it. I haven't. I think it's on my list. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. They talk about, scarcity creates attraction, and, the best way to get ahead, not beating your chest is, just you being confident in yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. Like when you're the apex predator in the jungle, you don't have to like beat your chest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a lion might, he might roar or whatever, but he's also kind of sneaking through the grass, right? It's usually the smaller animals that like kind of like that have those problems. Like look at dogs. Which ones are the meanest? It's usually small dogs. It's not like the big giant Great Danes. It's usually like small, like Chihuahuas, right?
Yeah. Definitely Chihuahuas. All right. Yeah. So I have two more questions and then we'll wrap up
absolutely.
Here. So one of my TikTok followers wanted me to ask you, how do you enforce a mediation agreement? Because apparently her ex hasn't returned some of her items that he was supposed to give back. Like, how do you enforce that? Do you have to take him back to court or what?
You can. Most of the time, what you want to do is just do it by head of court, right? So if you're planning that you're going to have a divorce, what you want to do is you can put certain provisions in there saying, like, I'm doing one right now with a guy who has these guns, right? These guns that are really sentimental to him. He really likes his guns. And wife is keeping him kind of locked up. She changed the lock on the storage bin and she's not letting him have access to his guns. Right. So do you really need to take it to mediation for that? No, probably not. Just put an order in there. And there's special orders you can put in there.
I was going to say, I think what she's saying though, is that she already has a mediation agreement. Like they agreed on this and he's just not following through.
I mean, it might help to facilitate something with the court. I would say probably, maybe facilitate something with the court. That's probably what I would do.
Okay. So you just file a motion and they have a cop have a sheriff or something come in.
Yeah. I mean, and then usually if they have an agreement, I usually put it on the record, right? So you'll see it verbally in front of the judge and, the clerk's taking notes and everything.
Yeah.
And so it becomes like an order of the court, right? And then they'll fill out a form and then the judge will sign it and then you each get a copy. And then at that point you take that thing that you mediated on and you have an order that's legally binding. And then, so if they don't comply, like for example, if she's having an issue, then that would be a contempt of court, right? That would be a contempt of court. You file a motion for contempt of court.
Yeah.
And then depending on the judge and the severity, it could change. Some of the time it's just a slap on the wrist. If it's an actual coveted item, they'll be like, hey, you need to give this back by this time. Mm. Okay. Most of the time they just hear the judge's voice and the judge with the black robe seeing them, well, that's enough, right? They're like, oh crap. Like that's when it hits and reality hits. So that's what I would tell her. Probably file something.
File something with the court
where she's at. It might be called something different. That's why I don't want to give her like the exact name of it.
Sure. And this isn't legal advice anyway.
Right.
Okay. Then the last thing, now this is kind of an odd thing. And I thought it was such a weird thing to bring up, but I was like, whatever, I'll ask. So a fellow content creator, you may or may not know him. Do you know Chuck Daddy? Have you heard of Chuck Daddy?
Why does that sound so familiar?
He does these like videos where he's like a real estate mogul out of New Jersey. And he does these videos where he's married, but he's got all these side chicks, and he's very red pilled and stuff like that. Anyway, he and I, like we've connected and we chat every once in a while. And so he said he goes, so he wants your opinion on if you think divorce law is more crooked than criminal law.
It's funny you should say that. Yeah. No.
And then there's this.
No, because me, it's like, it's a lot more black and white than you think. I mean, there's some stuff that's just going to kind of be like, right? Yeah. Custody is going to be but like division of assets, right? It's just going to be splitting stuff up in the middle. Whereas criminal law is there, you have a gradient shades of different stuff, right? So you'll have like, I don't know, maybe somebody did kill somebody for something, but maybe they got second degree murder.
Yeah.
Versus them, they should have gotten like maybe negligent homicide or manslaughter, right? And that makes a huge difference, right? Because, like one of them, it's life in prison without parole. The other one, it's like it's just an amount of time.
Got
right?
It.
Like my dad, for example, my dad had a friend growing up, right? And this is kind of a funny family. It's not funny, but I have like a messed up sense of humor. So he had a friend that basically walked in and saw his wife with another man. They were in the middle of an act.
Okay.
And he just calmly walked out of the room, grabbed a shotgun, walked back in the room, and just like boom, boom, killed both of them.
Mm-hmm. Crime of passion.
And then just put the gun down and just picked up the phone. He was like, "Hey, I just killed my wife and her lover," right? Ended up pleading guilty to like to manslaughter, which that's what it was. And he was very cooperative and everything, and they worked with him. So yeah, I would say family law is less crooked. Okay. I mean, it seems like it's not, but I mean, the law is the law, right? It just, a lot of people don't like it because it's very emotional.
Sure.
Because you're dealing with relationships, you're dealing with children, you're dealing with like, I invested this much time in you and I feel like I didn't get this.
Yeah.
Whereas criminal law is, maybe you did something wrong. Maybe you stole something, but maybe you stole something because you're hungry and you're trying to feed your kids, or maybe you, you shouldn't have hit that guy in the bar, but maybe you were trying to defend yourself. Maybe something like that come into play. And then there's variations of that, right? There's certain defenses that you can present yourself. So I think what I do, if you want to say less crooked, I would say you kind of have an idea. I think there's way less of an outcome, or it's way more predictable over here.
Got it. Okay. Now, he proposed this scenario. So have you ever heard of a scenario like this? Opposing counsel meets in the judge's chambers. And then the two attorneys say, look, we know that the wife has this many assets and this much net worth, and the husband has this many assets and this much net worth. How can we partner up here to get as much as possible and give a kickback to the judge? Is that's
okay. You have what they call the MPRE. When you want to become a lawyer and you're in the middle of law school, you take ethics, right?
Yeah.
Or a professional responsibility. And on that, you have what they call the MPRE. So it's a separate portion of the bar. Each state is different. It's a universal test.
Yeah.
But each state is different. Like in Louisiana, I got a score in 80. Right. Some states you got to score, like California, you got to score like, I think like a 90 or 100. It's insanely high.
Okay.
But that's one of the questions they always ask. If it's like a one of those scenarios, you're violating the rules of professional conduct.
Yeah.
Do you think you have to, as an attorney, you have to report that? Like, I don't like snitching. I really, really don't. Like, I don't like having to go to other lawyers, because that's the thing I want to do is throw somebody under the bus. You think I would because I'm an attorney, but I don't like doing stuff like that.
Yeah. So so if another attorney says that, hey, Matt, we can get a lot of money out of these guys, and if we can get the judge in, we can give him a kickback. Like, you are morally and ethically supposed to report that.
I can't do that. I'll get in an insane amount of trouble. Look, I've had cases where I could have gotten, like, somebody was just going to come in and they were going to drop like $5,000, right? And they were like, yeah, give me the paperwork. I'm ready to do this. Like, let's get this done. Like, I'll give you as much money as you want, as much money as you need. And I couldn't take the case because the one case where his wife, or soon to be ex-wife, happened to talk to me before he did, right? So I already technically consulted with her.
Yeah.
So I would have sufficient knowledge about their relationships. I couldn't have represented him.
Got it.
And
So
you see that stuff happen all the time, and it's so freaking irritating.
Yeah. Okay. But do you think that happens though? Do you think that there's some dirty attorneys out there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It happens. It's jaw dropping. They got attorneys here, I think, that like, and I hate saying this, I really do, because there's like, most attorneys are really, I mean, some of them are like really, really good people, but you have like the bad apples, right? You have those bad apples. There's one here. We're not going to say this person's name.
Yeah, we're not throwing anybody under the bus.
Yeah,
here.
They'll supposedly what they'll do is they'll drag stuff out at court to rack up the bill, which is kind of shady, but they could kind of justify it. But how they'll do it is they'll flat fee everything. So first court appearance, I'm going to charge you $2,000. Give you $2,000. Oh, well, guess what? We couldn't take care of it, so I'm going to have to get another $2,000 for the next court appearance and the next one. And then so something that was taken like that I could do in probably like $2,500, they're paying like 10 grand to do, right? So it becomes like, and they don't, I've had people lie. I've had attorneys flat out lie. I went to Lafayette, which is an hour west of us.
Mm-hmm.
And had a case there where it was like, we had an agreement and we went back there, we did everything. And then they started, because they were the ones that were talking to the judge, they started sneaking certain things in there saying, oh, well, we agreed to this, we agreed to that. And I was like, whoa, we didn't agree to this thing over here. I agreed to this, but I didn't agree to this. So most of the time when you see people doing unethical stuff, that's how they do it. They'll kind of sneak stuff in.
Got it. Okay.
And it's usually not like a flat out, hey, I'm gonna keep money in the icebox over here. It's not like anything. It's not like a mob movie. It's not like what is that? Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched that movie and I'm just like, I love it because I like the personality. I think he did a good job in that area because there's some aspects to it that he just nailed. Mm-hmm. Right. But just speaking like the ethic violations, I'm just like, they just make me cringe. They just make me cringe. I can't watch legal dramas. Like Suits, I wouldn't fly. Like a guy pretending to be an attorney, you have to write your license number at the bottom. It goes at the bottom of your petitions, right? So anytime you sign your name, you're going to have your license or your bar roll number right there. So none of that crap would have flown.
Got it. Okay.
And it's really easy to look up. It's not like he could have and they had a kid. Oh, you want to hear about a case? They had a law student here a couple of years ago. Out in New Orleans, and she was a law student, and she was going out and pretending that she was a criminal defense attorney, and she was going out and signed petitions using somebody else's bar roll number, and then that person got called, and they're like, "So why did you agree to blah blah blah?" And they said, "I was never there."
Yeah.
I don't even think they were in the state. And they showed it and they're like, okay, well, who is this? And then they traced it back to the other girl. And then she ended up getting in a lot of trouble for practicing law without a license. And she was like she was like a second year student. She was doing what they call I'm having one of those brain farts right now, but your second, third year law school, you have the ability to basically go in and you can practice law in a limited capacity. You have to practice underneath another person's license.
Yeah.
And this person was clearly not doing that. They were doing it on their own and they were taking fees. They were making money off of it.
Oh, wow.
This is more of a nonprofit thing. It would be like the school I graduated from, right? They'll take small little divorce cases for people that are poor, or they'll take small little cases of petty theft, DUIs, housing issues, small little trademark issues. It gives the students a chance to kind of learn the law, learn how to practice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people are getting something out of it. The community's getting something out of it. So Yeah, clinics. That's what they're clinics. I don't know why I'm like
legal clinic. Okay.
Yeah, a clinic. Yeah, just about every school's got a version of them. Some of them do different things. Every school's got like a different one. They got like some of them are really good in this area and some of them are really good in this area. Like our neighboring school here in Baton Rouge, they're really good with like, they have like a mineral rights, right? So oil and gas is big here in Louisiana. So, maybe Farmer John or Farmer Ted wants to see, they know that they have oil on their land or they have something that's could be mined, right? So they'll go to like the clinic and they'll have somebody that eventually wants to work in oil and gas as an attorney, and they'll help draft it up, right? So you see a lot of that. So our school is known for trial stuff. So we did a lot of trial stuff, everything from family law to criminal law. Shout out to my chancellor and everything. It'd be like, I would talk to him and, I'd say, hey, we're having an issue with this. And he'd like look up and he'd be like, we don't have a clinic for that. And I'm like, no. And he's like, we should do that. Okay, I'm going to go get on the phone and find some money for that.
Yeah.
And then we get money. So it was just funny how you just like pull money out of his hat.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, it's been well over an hour now, I think. So.
Oh, yeah. Didn't mean to keep you.
No, this is really good. Having you on. This are lots of good information here. Do you want to plug your practice or?
Yeah. Okay. We're here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the Louisiana Family Law Firm, divorce, custody, child support. I got approved now. If you see on this meeting right back here, I got approved with the Veteran Court of Appeals. If you're having veterans issues with disability and compensation, I do that. We do that. Give us a call, number 225-314-1180. And just look us up. We're on the first page of Google in Baton Rouge. So, yeah.
Cool, Matt.
All right.
Brother. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Matt, as always, thanks for coming on, brother. I love when you come on. I love having our conversations. It's good stuff. I like picking your brain about this legal stuff like that because it's such a sticky subject. The whole idea of divorce. So many guys have just completely given up on divorce altogether, or given up on marriage rather altogether, which sort of makes sense these days. I mean, as we talked about in the show, you can, if you get married, there's risk there. There's absolute risk there, especially for men. And there's really not much you can do to protect everything. Nothing's ironclad. It's like we talked about, it's like a bulletproof vest, right? You might get some cracked ribs, you might get some shrapnel in the arm, but you're not going to die, but you're not going to come out unscathed either. So some food for thought, guys, some food for thought. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you have any questions for Matt or I on this subject, hit us up in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Come On, Man. If you're new to the podcast, I highly recommend reading How to Be a 3% Man by Corey Wayne at least 10 to 15 times. I recommend you watch his coaching videos on YouTube, and I recommend that you engage with other 3% men in our 3% Man Facebook group. Links to all of these are in the show notes. If you like this episode, please give us a good rating on your podcast platform of choice and share with all of your bros. Now go out and get it.